What's going on, everybody? The Real Sharif M here, aka Manganese Steel, and boy do I have a controversial one for this video. Let's talk today about the Liong Mah Field Duty. So, if you guys don't know about the controversy and you've been kind of living underneath a rock, right? Basically, this was one of the most controversial knives of the year, and it really kind of erupted, big time, I believe at the start of the year, because that's when these things were starting to be delivered. Now, if you don't know the reason for the controversy, essentially this was supposed to be Liong Mah's latest and greatest new offering to the public. Everybody was really excited about it, and they placed their pre-orders. The pre-orders proceeded to take upwards of 14 to 16 months for some people to get delivered for essentially a titanium carbon fiber knife with an S90V steel blade. These things cost, if I remember correctly, north of $400. There may have been ones that were just below that, but they were in and around the 400, 450 price point, if I'm not mistaken. And as I said, they took between 14 and 16 weeks to get into people's hands. A lot of people were really, really frustrated with them when they arrived because the detent was incredibly weak. And I can attest to that, having handled this particular one. Now, the detent isn't so weak that you can shake it out, but really, if you finger flick it from the lowest position here in the hole, you can consistently fail it. In fact, it will exclusively fail from this position. I cannot get, there we go. I cannot get consistent leverage from this low position to be able to middle finger flick it or reverse flick it. Now, it does work if you thumb flick it, and it does work if you use the top flipper like this. Now, all of this really came to a head when Jared Neves of Neves Knives proceeded to review this knife, and he pointed out a lot of concerns with this thing, and really Liong Mah responded quite unfavorably. He made a number of personal attacks against Jared Neves, which I personally deem as completely unprofessional and unwarranted, given the fact that Jared Neves tends to do very, very, very unbiased and very just honest reviews. And so the community, a lot of people clapped back, and that really affected Liong Mah's reputation and standing in the community with a number of people. Now, I can also tell you that in talking with a number of owners who've had this, a lot of people were not just concerned about the weak detent, but were concerned about fit and finish. There were reports of people getting, for example, a burlap micarta version where this through hole for the lanyard was just simply unfinished. And there were fibers and all sorts of just, it looked like it had been drilled through, and that was it. They didn't do any finishing work or any QC work on the thing after that. And there are some elements of that kind of still on this guy that was sent to me. Now, this was sent to me by a viewer of the channel. I'm not sure if he wants his name mentioned because from what I understand, he intends to sell this. And he is the third owner of this knife. And from what he has told me, not one of the three owners have deemed this worthy of carrying, which is really surprising and in my opinion tells you a lot. This was a big fumble by both Riot, in my opinion. They do deserve a fair amount of the blame, and Liong Mah as far as handling the negative feedback and communicating with a number of the customers, both in terms of the wait time and dealing with the issues therein with the knife. Let that be a lesson to all of us, really, that, you know, even the greats can fall. It's, you know, or even not fall. Fall is a dramatic way of putting it. But even the greats can have missteps. It's really about how you handle it and, you know, how you deal with those moments that really defines your character. Right now, as I'm recording this, I'm on the precipice of launching my own brand, and I definitely am very concerned about this exact issue. Not so much about the fit and finish in the product, but, you know, if there are any issues, how am I going to handle it? How am I going to communicate with the community at large and ensure that I maintain and continue to build trust with people? And both, in my opinion, Riyadh and Liong Mah evaporated a significant amount of trust with the community with the launch of this particular knife. From a design review point of view, yeah, that sounds funny. I can honestly tell you that as far as being a knife is concerned, it actually knifes well. Like, I really can't say that this is a crap design and it should have never existed. I can't. It's actually, for my double extra large hands, is actually quite comfortable. You know, the choke up position is really great. I really feel that I have a lot of leverage and I can control the knife really well. Again, comfortable in hand. Now, $400+? No, I definitely wouldn't say that, but it is, you know, like I said, very comfortable. It knives really well. It does what a knife is supposed to do. And I find that the subtle chamfering here and there, you know, the chamfering, you know, on the inner edges, the outer edges, it really feels like if you've ever handled a 1911 kind of with blending, you know, it kind of feels like that. And in that sense, it's good. It's genuinely good. It feels nice. It doesn't feel per se luxurious or ultra premium, but it definitely feels very good. Now, the detent is horribly weak. Yeah, see, it didn't even lock when I just did that. But you can get it to middle finger flick if you put your finger up towards the highest position to get the most amount of leverage. See, you can get it to go consistently. Where I do think that the issue with the detent arose from is this leaned back front flipper. Looks good, looks subtle, all of that stuff, but that's where I think the issue stems from. Because when you do open it from that position, it does work very well. It's very snappy, the detent pressure feels right, everything feels good about it. But that comes at the expense of this rather generous, you know, hole that he put in the blade. Like, if you wanted to do one without the other, I kind of understand that. Or if you wanted to reduce the size of the hole, I think that you know, not the vertical height of the hole, but the length of the hole. Like, he could have gone to about here and it would have been far more balanced and actually would have been a bit more consistent. And that could have been discovered within the prototyping phase, which I'm not sure if that was done here. Now, part of that whole detent issue, as I mentioned, comes from this being so lean back. Typically, when we see front flippers, here's a good example in the KIZER Veritas. Look at how forward this is and vertical. And this actuates beautifully. I mean, I can hit this even with the index finger very easily and consistently, and it just snaps. It does so beautifully and aggressively. And you can see there's a smaller hole here, like I was recommending with the Field Duty, that allows me to reverse flick it, and the detent is tuned beautifully for both. So this is something that I think either Riyadh should have had advised him on and said, hey, listen, this is going to come at the expense of the detent, or they should have told him to make it a little bit more vertical. Now, maybe they did tell him that, and he said, no, I don't want to affect the lines. This is how I designed the knife. But it obviously affected like the net hole of the knife kind of poorly. Now, aside from just my perspective where this hole should have been shortened a bit to right about there, if he wanted to keep this front flipper, I think that would have kind of masked the issue, because a lot of people, me in particular, I like to flip from down low. I did find some strangeness with the construction and the kind of fit and finish of this knife. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to a top-down view and show you guys a little bit of my nitpicks on what really should have been, in my opinion, a flawless knife, especially at this price point. When we look closely at the Field Duty here, I feel that there's some really genuine oddities in terms of the construction and the execution, and just some real like fit and finish kind of issues, especially considering the cost of this particular product, right? So I'm going to kind of do my best to go around them. I'm not sure how many will show up on camera here. I've got the wide angle lens kind of set up, and you know, we'll try to get as macro of a shot of these different features as I possibly can. So let's go for it. Let's go for it. The first thing that really kind of bothers me here is this guy, right? If you look, there's, you know, overrun of carbon fiber here. This doesn't go all the way to the edge. There's inconsistent gaps from left to right, from top to bottom. And actually, there appears to be some degree of asymmetry here and here. It just doesn't end up looking right, or doesn't end up looking very high quality. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's very apparent to me, especially within like the lighting. But there are a lot of like subtle voids that are all throughout here. This on the same thing kind of shows up right around in here and in here. There are a lot of, man, I don't know if this is going to show up at all, but it is much more apparent in person. But there are subtle carbon fiber voids all throughout here. When you hit this area with a flashlight, and you can even feel it drawing this little plastic piece up and down here, there is significant rough sections, as if it really wasn't machined well. It looks like there are like scratches in the carbon fiber, and again, more voids in it. And especially considering this is supposed to be coming from Riyadh, that is absolutely surprising. If this is indicative of where Riyadh is right now, I am shocked. I am shocked, because this is, at least for me, a fall for grace from, you know, the fit and finish. Again, for there to be like loose fibers, inconsistencies here, you know, I mean, this whole area really does not look right to me at all. Even the placement of the screw looks a bit off center to my eyes. Another thing that, I mean, I appreciate what they were trying to do here from like a construction point of view, but there is a chamfer that runs the inner edge of the carbon fiber here, and that meets up with the backspacer, which also has a chamfered edge. And if this was titanium on titanium, it would be a very good look. But when you actually get this in your hand with there being carbon fiber scales and titanium, it ends up looking like the titanium isn't flush with the backspace, or with the scales. So the backspacer kind of looks like it's improperly seated, and I realized that's what I thought initially when I handled this, but upon closer inspection there is like a micro chamfer here and there's a micro chamfer there, but you don't notice the micro chamfer on the carbon fiber right away due to the fact that it's dark, you know. So you end up getting this aesthetic that the backspacer is not actually fully flush and seated properly, which it is, but that's still the impression you get. Now, as far as the rest of the construction is concerned, I don't have too many like issues. I mean, by now, I'm sure in the video I've already talked about the detent and how it's really a joke, in my opinion. But there's other little subtle things here, like, again, this isn't high level nitpicking from like a design perspective, but you see that there's like this flat here, but it doesn't stay flat. There's actually like a kink right here where it goes kind of almost vertical and then it rounds, which doesn't make sense. Like, that adds unnecessary complication to the manufacturing process for the tool on the cutting path. Like, and it's done so subtly, you can see it right here, you know, the way the light catches that. You can see that there's almost like a flat section there versus here. You know, this is another large flat section, and this reflection here, this transition from light, like this is the brightest, this is a mid-tone, this is the darkest. This is what tells you very clearly that there is a surface change there. I genuinely think it is unnecessary and kind of fussy for the simplicity and the purity of shape that this is supposed to embody. And it's so subtle that you don't really even notice it. So why put it in there? And I don't know, there's just little subtle things. Like, again, there feels like there's a slight hump here between the top section and this curve that really, I don't know, to me it either speaks of poor manufacturing or poor modeling. Because that's a really easy thing to resolve in modeling, and it serves no purpose in the knife. So why would there be a little hump right here? And why would there be this little flat? So I don't know, you guys. Like, there's definitely some weird things going on with this knife. Furthermore, the construction internally is really something I don't feel like I've ever seen from Riot before. And again, it's for the cost of this knife, right? For the cost of this is a little shocking. Let me see if I can put this on a dimmer light. You see that inner frame right there? Man, it's kind of hard to pick up without trying to disassemble the knife here. But the way this thing is constructed really surprised me. It's a steel inner frame that goes up here, and the titanium is bolted to it, and the carbon fiber is bolted to that. I did not expect this to essentially be like a steel liner lock knife, you know, on both sides with just, you know, titanium bolster and carbon fiber. That is a lot cheaper construction-wise than I really expected for something like this. When I get something like this, especially this price point, I would have expected that little sub-chassis throughout here to be titanium and then kind of, nested inside of the carbon fiber. And then if they still wanted to do a liner lock like this, then that liner lock would have been like bolted to that or something like that. A $400 knife with like milled steel internals and just titanium for show and carbon fiber. Dude, I don't know. My budget GRAZIOSO is constructed the same way. My budget RUCKUS, the one that has the blue titanium and the G10, is constructed exactly the same way. It's a titanium inner liner, So for this to be over $400, you can't just put it all on the steel of S90V. I mean, that is a chunk of S90V, don't get me wrong, but dudes, this thing, Riyadh and Liong Mah definitely are trying, in my opinion, kind of pulled a fast one on a lot of people. This is just not what I would have expected at this price point, to be 100% honest. Alrighty guys, so you've seen from my top-down video that I had some significant concerns with this guy as far as like the fit and finish and some of the design decisions, the execution, and so forth. But really, this section here, my sort of conclusion, I've decided to re-record, hopefully, or you can probably tell because the lighting is different. And the reason why I decided to re-record this is because I don't feel that my previous sort of conclusion conveyed in an impassioned way enough the issues that I do find with this knife, right? So just to be clear, this is a $395 to $540 knife. $540, okay? I believe this particular model with the marbled or shred, no, this is shred carbon fiber, and S90V goes for around $500, okay? How dare he charge Chris Reeves Knives money for this thing? This is by no means even remotely sort of machined or precision toleranced at the same level as something like a Chris Reeves or almost any $500 knife that I have experienced so far. As a matter of fact, the construction of this knife is no fundamentally different than this guy, okay? This is my budget KUBEY RUCKUS, and it is built exactly the same way. It has a liner lock with holes cut out for weight relief. That steel supports this titanium bolster and this G10 scale. And really, it's fundamentally no different in terms of construction. Now, that's not to crap on liner locks. There are very good and premium liner locks. Cultrotech is an excellent example, but their construction is far superior to anything presented here. And to combine that with just very clear voids, unfinished milling. I mean, really, the fact that there's even voids or rough sections, or as you saw in the top-down view, like frayed carbon fiber, inconsistencies with the spacing of the pocket clip. For $500, this thing should be perfect. I don't care who you are, right? And really, S90V is not a justification for charging this kind of money at all, okay? We have some excellent examples of S90V being cheaper. On the most expensive side, we have the new Gunslinger by Jack Wolf Knives. This is $350. That's a long distance away from $500. Well, you'd say, oh, well, you know, the Field Duty has a bigger blade, you know, and requires more machining potentially than the Gunslinger. Well, KUBEY sells my RUCKUS, which has very sophisticated machining in order to get some of these transitionary surfaces in here, with an S90V for about $200, and actually you can get it on sale for cheaper. And if you say, oh, well, Sharif, that's not a good argument because it's a mass production knife, you know, this thing was done in much smaller quantities. Well, I have a counter argument to that as well. There's the Skeleton Blade Works Caladan, which was going for around $250 with an S90V blade. So you can't tell me that the price is even remotely justified for this. We're talking literally steel liners, titanium bolsters that are just for show. It's not part of the structure like you would normally see in a full titanium bolster lock, like this guy, right, where the titanium runs the full length. You're seeing, you know, carbon fiber, which is great, but it's, you know, it's commonplace nowadays, and an S90V blade steel. Honestly, I do not understand the justification for this price on any level. And on top of that, you know, like the action isn't phenomenal. You would think that with this weak detent, the thing would be drop shutty, but no, it's actually shake closed, which is strange to me, because even on my KIZER Kaimano or KIZER manufacturer OEM Kaimano, I have a very stiff detent on here, and this thing drops shut consistently. Look at that. Look at that. So how does my knife with a stiff detent drop shut, and this thing with its joke of a weak detent not? Look at this. You have to shake it in order for it to close. I don't get it. Here's the thing. I don't completely blame Liong Mah for this. I really don't. This is Riyadh. This is Riyadh right now. And if this is indicative of where Riyadh currently is in terms of their manufacturing and their execution, I'm beyond shocked. I'm beyond shocked. Like right now, they are definitely, you know, playing second fiddle to Best Tech and KIZER then. If this is, you know, representative of their quality control, their OEM work, you know, and so forth. All of the knives that I have that are in the over $400 price point are flawless, like fundamentally flawless, okay? So for this thing to be charging, you know, or for this thing to be asking for that kind of money, I think is simply a cash grab. That's really the only way that I can put it. And I am borderline offended by it, to be 100% honest, right? Look at this guy. This is the American Blade Works Model 1, okay? 20 CV, all handmade, liner lock, sells for $200. $200. This thing is way better quality, way better finished, way better in every single way than that Field Duty is. And it literally costs less than half the price. Half the price. I don't care if they put carbon fiber on it and they charge me an extra $50. Even at $250 for this thing, this is an infinitely better knife. And there is no argument that can convince me that this thing justifies the $395 to $540 price point that was asked for this. Like, I don't know, you guys. Like, we really need to stop the madness when it comes to just accepting some of these prices from these manufacturers. You know, as I said in the initial part of the video, as far as the knife goes, it knifes, right? But what makes this fundamentally different than any other knife that knifes, right? And it's, at the price point, it should be perfect, and it's not. It just isn't, you know? So, I don't know, you guys. Like, if you guys are on the side of Liong Mah, please let me know, like, what your justification is for this price and this sort of quality, you know? Because a steel liner lock, and it's not a sophisticated liner lock, it's a basic liner lock, right? Like, I have other Riot made liner locks, like a Moen Mongoose, where it's infinitely better constructed, in my opinion, and it cost half of what this cost, right? Let me know how you justify paying the money for this. And if you are not a fan of Liong Mah or how he handled things, well, then this is just more ammo for you, I guess. But genuinely speaking, from a manufacturing and a design perspective, this thing was a surprising letdown on multiple levels. And I don't know, I don't mean to rant, you know, but I'm just that frustrated. The more and more I think about it, the more and more that I feel that this was a bit of a cash grab. And between the price, the extended pre-order time, you know, all of it, and quite frankly, Riot just crapping the bed as far as QC is concerned, this really did damage to the community in a way that I really don't think is easy to come back from. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Appreciate you guys sticking with me. I know this was a long one for you guys, but I said what needed to be said.